If you pay your credit card on time every month, this is the part no one warns you about. I never missed a credit card payment. Not once. Autopay was always on. Full balance. Every month, nothing felt wrong. That's what made it dangerous. On paper, I was doing everything right. I had a steady job, a good credit score. No late fees, no carried balance, gas, groceries, rent. A few subscriptions I told myself were reasonable, nothing fancy, and still, month after month, there was this quiet feeling I couldn't shake. I wasn't falling apart, but I wasn't getting ahead either. Every paycheck landed, and somehow, it already felt spoken for. When something goes wrong, you fix it, you adjust, you learn. But when nothing goes wrong and you still feel stuck, you don't know what to fix. So I told myself the usual things. Be more disciplined. Cut a little more. Just give it time. Everyone says credit cards are fine if you use them responsibly. And I was responsible. Or at least, I thought I was. One night, nothing special about it, I opened my credit card app. Not because I was worried, just habit. I checked the balance. It had gone down. Barely. Then I noticed something else. My available credit had gone up. That part felt good, reassuring, like progress. I stared at the screen longer than usual. The balance barely moved, but the bank trusted me more. I hadn't paid interest. I hadn't missed a payment. I hadn't done anything wrong. So why did it feel like I was running in place? If you've ever had that moment, opening an app, seeing everything technically fine, but feeling heavier instead of lighter, you know what I mean. Nothing dramatic happened. No overdraft. No late fee. No warning email. Just this quiet realization. Doing everything right didn't feel like winning. That's when the question changed. Not, how do I use credit cards better? But something simpler and more uncomfortable. If I'm not paying interest, where is the money actually going? Because banks don't increase limits out of generosity. They don't offer rewards because they're impressed by discipline. And that's when it clicked. Maybe credit cards aren't dangerous because people use them badly. Maybe they're dangerous because they work exactly as designed, even when you think you're doing everything right. Now, let me be clear. In this video, I'm not going to give you hacks. I'm not going to tell you to be more disciplined. What I want to show you is the one part of the credit card system most people never notice. The part that quietly keeps you spending, even when nothing feels wrong. Once you see it, you'll know exactly when a credit card is helping you, and when it's slowly working against you. At that point, I wasn't trying to game anything. I just wanted to understand the rules. Because if the rules were different from what I thought, then staying responsible wasn't enough. And if that was true, a lot of people weren't failing at money. They were just playing a game. They were never shown. That's where this story actually begins. Not with debt, not with mistakes, but with a system that stays invisible as long as nothing goes wrong. If you've ever felt this way, the problem isn't discipline. It's the number no one ever tells you to pay attention to. If you pay your credit card on time, there's a good chance you're still paying the wrong number. Most people don't realize this until it's already cost them years. Give me 2 minutes. I'll show you the one number that decides whether your payments actually move you forward or just keep you stuck. Here's the uncomfortable part. If nothing felt wrong, why did it still feel heavy? That question stayed with me longer than I expected. Because when money problems show up, they're usually loud. Missed payments, late fees, red alerts. I had none of that. So, like most people, I assumed the problem was me. Maybe I wasn't budgeting hard enough. Maybe I needed more discipline. Maybe this was just how adulthood worked. But then I realized something unsettling. I couldn't clearly answer a very simple question. What am I actually paying every month? Not how much I swipe, not how much I earn, not whether autopay is on. I mean, what part of my balance is actually going away? So let me ask you something. And don't answer it too fast. When you pay your credit card bill, what are you paying? The full balance? The statement balance? Or just whatever the app says is due? Most people think those are basically the same thing. They're not. And if you don't know the difference, you don't actually know whether you're making progress or just buying time. I didn't know that. I thought paying on time meant I was safe. I thought autopay meant control. But autopay doesn't mean clarity. And on time doesn't mean forward. At this point, I know what you might be thinking. I pay in full. This doesn't apply to me. That's exactly what I thought too. And that's why this system works so quietly. Because it doesn't rely on mistakes. It relies on assumptions. Like this. If the bank isn't charging interest, I must be fine. If my credit score is going up, I must be doing something right. But before we talk about interest, before rewards, before credit scores, there's one thing you need to see first, one number you need to understand, because once you see how that number actually works, you'll know whether your payments are helping you or just keeping you in the game. And until you see that, everything else is noise. To see that number clearly, you have to stop thinking about credit cards the way most people do. Most of us think a credit card bill is simple. You spend, you pay, balance goes down. That's not what's actually happening. When you open your credit card app, you usually see more than one number. But the app doesn't explain them, it just assumes you already know. I didn't. Here's the first number you see, minimum due. It feels harmless, almost helpful. Pay this, and you're good, no late fee, no warning. But that number isn't there to help you move forward. It's there to keep you in the game. Then there's the second number, statement balance. This one matters more than most people realize. It's the amount that decides whether your last month actually gets erased or quietly carried into the next one. When I finally understood that, something clicked. Paying the minimum doesn't reduce last month. It just keeps it alive. And even when you think you're paying in full, even if you think you're paying in full, it's easy to pay the wrong balance at the wrong time and carry more than you realize. That's why so many people swear they pay everything off and still feel stuck, because progress doesn't depend on how much you pay. It depends on which number you're paying. Now here's the part most people never notice. Your app puts the minimum due front and center. Big text. Clear button. The statement balance? Smaller, quieter, sometimes hidden behind another tap. That's not an accident. If you always pay the minimum, the bank makes interest. If you sometimes miss the statement balance, the bank still makes interest. If you carry even a small amount forward, rewards don't matter anymore. And that's why this system doesn't need you to make mistakes. It just needs you to follow the interface. Once I saw this, I stopped asking, am I paying on time? And started asking something very different. Am I actually closing the month? Because if you're not closing the month, you're not moving forward. You're just rolling yesterday into tomorrow. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't feel trapped by credit cards because of interest rates. They feel trapped because the system quietly blurs the line between paying and progressing. Now, before we talk about rewards, before we talk about credit scores, you need to lock this in. If you don't know which number you're paying, everything else is a distraction. And once you see this, you can't unsee it, because now you know why doing everything right still didn't feel like winning. And once you know which number matters, interest-free starts to sound different. Once you understand which number actually matters, something else starts to feel off. The phrase everyone trusts interest-free, that's the promise that makes everything feel safe. As long as you pay on time, as long as you're not being charged interest, you're fine. That's what I believe too, because interest-free sounds like nothing bad is happening. No penalty, no damage, no cost. But here's the part no one explains. Interest-free doesn't mean cost-free. It just means the cost hasn't shown up yet. When you don't pay interest, the system doesn't lose. It just switches tactics. Instead of charging you for money, it charges you with time. Time you don't feel slipping. Because when a payment doesn't hurt, you don't rush to close the month, you delay. You float. You tell yourself you'll clean it up later. And later always feels reasonable. That's why the grace period feels generous. It gives you breathing room, and breathing room can quietly become standing still. Here's what actually happens during that interest-free window. Your spending feels lighter than it is. Your balance feels manageable. Your available credit feels reassuring. Everything looks calm, which means you keep using the card the same way. Nothing forces a decision. Nothing creates urgency. And urgency is the only thing that closes a month. Without it, you don't move forward. You hover. That's the trap, not interest. Comfort. Because comfort keeps behavior unchanged. And unchanged behavior is exactly what the system needs. This is why so many people say, I never paid interest, but I still felt stuck. They weren't paying extra money. They were paying extra time. Time spent carrying yesterday forward. Time spent delaying real progress. And here's the most uncomfortable part. The moment interest does show up, it feels sudden. Like something went wrong overnight, but nothing went wrong. You were just floating for longer than you realized. The interest-free period didn't protect you. It distracted you. It kept everything smooth enough that you didn't feel the need to stop and reset. That's why the system doesn't need to rush you. It just needs you comfortable. Because comfort is quieter than pain, and much more effective. Now, this doesn't mean interest-free is evil, or that grace periods are scams. It means something much simpler. Interest-free only works if you use it to end a cycle, not extend one. If you're not using that window to fully close the month, it's not helping you. It's just postponing the moment when reality catches up, and once you see that interest-free stops sounding like protection and starts sounding like a test. And once comfort becomes the trap, it's easier to understand why rewards feel so tempting and why they're never really free. Once interest-free stops feeling safe, the next thing that starts to make sense is rewards. Cashback, points, miles. This is the part everyone loves, because rewards feel like proof that you're winning. Spend money, get something back. It feels fair. It feels smart. It feels earned. I thought that too. A few % back on groceries. Points stacking up quietly. Miles I told myself I'd use someday. It didn't feel like spending more. It felt like being efficient. But here's what I didn't notice at first. Rewards don't change how much things cost. They change how spending feels. When you swipe a card and see points instead of dollars, your brain stops asking the same questions. You don't think, do I really need this? You think, well, at least I'm getting something back. That small shift matters more than people realize, because rewards don't need to be big to work. They just need to be visible. 2% doesn't sound like much, and mathematically, it isn't. But psychologically, it's powerful. It turns spending into progress. Not real progress. Emotional progress. Every swipe feels justified. Every purchase feels slightly better than paying cash. And over time, that changes behavior. Not in obvious ways. Not reckless ways. In quiet ways. You don't buy things you'd never buy. You just stop questioning the ones you already do. That's the bait. Because rewards only exist after spending. You don't get points for saving. You don't get miles for waiting. You don't get cash back for not swiping. So the system nudges you toward the one action it rewards: spending. And here's the part most people never calculate. If you're carrying any balance at all, rewards stop being a benefit. They become a distraction. A few dollars back can't offset interest. A free flight can't undo months of floating a balance. Points don't matter if yesterday keeps rolling forward. But even when you aren't paying interest, rewards still have a cost. They make spending feel lighter than it is. And once spending feels normal, you stop slowing yourself down. That's why people say, I'm not chasing rewards, and they mean it. The system doesn't need you to chase. It just needs you to stop resisting. This is also why rewards feel so personalized. Different cards, different tiers, different colors. It feels like the bank is recognizing your habits. What it's really doing is reinforcing them. And the more comfortable you feel, the less likely you are to change anything. That's the quiet trick of rewards. Not that they make you spend wildly, but that they make spending feel harmless. So, if interest-free creates comfort, rewards turn that comfort into momentum. Not forward momentum, spending momentum. And once spending momentum kicks in, it becomes very hard to tell the difference between using a card responsibly and being gently guided by the system. And once spending feels normal, the next question isn't about rewards anymore. It's about why the system cares so much whether you keep using the card. Your credit score doesn't just follow your life, it quietly shapes it. By the time rewards feel normal, there's one more thing quietly guiding your behavior: your credit score. On the surface, it looks harmless, just a number, a rating, a score that says how trustworthy you are. Higher is better, lower is worse. Simple. That's how it's presented. But what that number really measures isn't who you are. It measures how well you follow the rules of borrowing. And once I realized that, the whole system looked different. Because a credit score doesn't reward saving. It doesn't reward patience. It doesn't reward spending less. It rewards using credit, regularly, predictably, quietly. That's why you hear advice like, use your card more to build credit. Keep a small balance. Don't close old accounts. None of that makes you wealthier. It just makes you easier for the system to read. And here's the part most people don't notice. Once your credit score starts to matter, it stops being a reflection. it becomes a leash. Because now, real life decisions depend on it. Renting an apartment, buying a car, insurance rates, sometimes even job applications. So you start making choices, not based on what's best for your money, but based on what keeps the number happy. You keep a card you never use. You hesitate to pay it off completely, just in case. Not because you need credit, but because you're afraid of what closing it might do to the score. You're not doing anything wrong. You're responding exactly the way the system expects you to. That's how control works best. Not through force, but through incentives. No one ever says, you must use credit. They just make life harder in small, quiet ways when you don't. The pressure isn't loud. It's subtle, a higher rate here, a denial there, a requirement you didn't expect. So you adapt. You keep accounts open. You keep swiping occasionally. You keep playing the game. Not because you want to, but because stepping away starts to feel risky. That's why the credit score is so powerful. It doesn't trap you with debt. It traps you with dependence. Dependence on a system that only works smoothly if you keep participating. And the most uncomfortable part? The system calls this responsibility. But responsibility, in this context, doesn't mean control. It means compliance. Now, to be clear, a credit score isn't evil. It can open doors. It can lower costs. It can make life easier. But only if you decide when it matters. The real question isn't how to raise your credit score. It's when that number is actually useful, and when it's quietly making decisions for you. Once you know the difference, you stop chasing the score and start using it on your own terms. So if credit cards, rewards, and credit scores all pull you in the same direction, here's the one thing to remember. Clarity beats convenience. And once you choose clarity, the question becomes unavoidable. How do you protect yourself without dropping out of the system entirely? At this point, you don't need another explanation. You already see the system. You've seen how payments work. You've seen how interest-free creates comfort. You've seen how rewards nudge behavior. You've seen how the credit score quietly pulls the strings. So now the question becomes simple. What do you actually do with this? Not in theory, not someday, but starting tomorrow. I'm going to give you a few principles you can live by. Not rules you memorize, not hacks you optimize. Just ways to stay in control while still living in the real world. Let's start with the most important one. If a credit card changes what you buy, it's already a problem. Here's how you check that. Before you swipe, pause for 1 second and ask yourself a very simple question. Was I already planning to spend this money before I reached for the card? Groceries you were already buying? Gas you already need? A bill that already exists? That's fine. But the moment the card makes you think, well, I can handle it because I'll pay it later, that's not convenience anymore. That's borrowing against your future attention. Credit should only change how you pay. It should never change what you buy. If it changes what you buy, it's already making the decision for you. Now let's talk about the habit that keeps people stuck longer than anything else. Floating. Floating feels responsible. You're paying something. You're staying current. Nothing bad happens. But floating destroys clarity. Here's the line you don't cross. If you can't fully close the statement balance with money you already have, you stop using the card. Not next month. Not after the next paycheck. Now, here's how you make that decision real. Open your credit card app. Look at the statement balance. Ask yourself one question. Can I make this number disappear without touching future income? If the answer is no, the card goes away until it's gone. No swiping. No exceptions. No, I'll clean it up later. Because the moment you float, spending stops feeling real. And once spending stops feeling real, nothing else works. Now let's deal with rewards. This one trips people up because rewards feel smart. Here's the fastest test you'll ever need. Before you swipe, ask yourself this. Would I still buy this if the card gave me nothing back? If the answer isn't an immediate yes, don't swipe. That's it. If rewards influence the decision, they're already controlling it. Rewards should be invisible. They should never be the reason. The moment you hear yourself thinking, at least I'll get points, the decision is already compromised. You don't win by earning rewards. You win by not changing your behavior because of them. Now, let's talk about the credit score. Because this is where people get quietly trapped. Your credit score is not a life score. It's a borrowing score. So here's the only time it deserves your attention. Ask yourself this. Am I planning to borrow money in the next 12 months? A mortgage? A car loan? Something real? If the answer is yes, Fine, take care of the score. Be intentional. But if the answer is no, stop feeding it. You don't need to swipe to stay active. You don't need to keep accounts open forever. You don't need to keep a balance, just in case. Fear-based activity is still control. The score should serve specific moments in your life. It should not quietly dictate all of them. Now here's something almost no one talks about. Complexity is how systems hide cost. Every extra card adds another balance. Another decision. Another excuse to swipe. More options don't give you more control. They give you more noise. If you want to feel in control, simplify. 1 or 2 cards you understand deeply. Beat 5 you barely think about. Clarity always wins over optimization. Now pay attention to this, because it's the quiet warning sign most people ignore. Confusion. If you ever feel confused about your credit card situation, stop. If you don't know which number you're paying, if you don't know whether the month is closed, if you don't know why you're using the card in the first place, pause. Don't swipe again until everything makes sense. The system benefits from speed. You benefit from understanding. Confusion isn't a failure. It's a signal. And finally, there's one mindset shift that changes everything. The goal isn't to be good with credit. The goal is to need it less. Not overnight. Not dramatically. Gradually. Credit should be a convenience, not a foundation. The less your life depends on it, the freer your decisions become. And freedom is the one reward no card can give you. So if you use credit, use it with clarity. If you don't need it, don't feed it. And if something ever feels too smooth, too easy, too comfortable, that's usually the moment to slow down and look closer. Because efficient systems don't need bad intentions to cause damage. They just need you to stop paying attention. If you've stayed with me this long, you've probably noticed something. Nothing in this video was complicated. There were no formulas, no tricks, no secret hacks. And yet, things might feel different now. Not because you learned something new, but because you finally saw what was already there. That's usually how these systems work. They don't hide behind complexity. They hide behind familiarity, credit cards, rewards, scores. They're part of everyday life, so we stop questioning them. We assume that if nothing feels wrong, nothing is wrong. But now you know that's not how it works. You can pay on time and still stand still. You can avoid interest and still lose clarity. You can earn rewards and slowly change how you spend. You can build a great credit score and quietly let it run your decisions. None of that means you failed. It just means you were never shown what to look for. And once you see it, you don't need fear to stay alert. You just need awareness. From here on out, the goal isn't perfection. You don't need to optimize every dollar. You don't need to cut every card. You don't need to play the system harder. You just need to stay conscious of when something stops serving you and starts shaping you. That's the real survival skill. Because money problems rarely come from one bad decision. They come from small habits that feel harmless at the time. Habits that keep going. Because no one ever tells you to stop and ask why. If this video did its job, you won't look at your credit card app the same way again. Not with fear, not with guilt, just with clearer eyes. And that's enough. This channel exists for one reason: to slow things down, to make invisible systems visible, and to help regular people protect themselves without becoming experts or obsessing over money. If you want more videos like this, you can stay close. I'll be here. And if not, that's fine too. Just don't stop paying attention. Because once you understand how the system works, the most dangerous thing you can do is go back to using it on autopilot.